Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. So here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
We welcome you to hour number 3, our third and final on this last Saturday in October. It is college football today, live right here on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. And I am Ben Stevens. So much to get to here in our third and final hour. We are just 60 minutes away, less than that, from the kicks in this noon Eastern time window on a huge Saturday slate. 5 ranked versus ranked top 25 tilts, the most we have seen in a single day throughout the entirety of this 2024 college football campaign. And to end out October deep into conference action, a ton of rivalry matchups now to preview. We start in the Sunshine State. We're entering the year, oh boy, that final Saturday in October, 5 ranked versus ranked games. What is this, a top 10, top 15 tilt between Florida State and Miami? Incorrect. The Canes are unbeaten, a perfect 7-0, ranked 6th in the country. Florida State has 6 losses. FSU is 1-6. And we see a 3-touchdown number, Joe, in favor of Miami. Now, Florida State has won 3 in a row in this rivalry series. Miami expected to change that today, but by how much?
I think by a lot. I think they cover the number fairly easy. In order to challenge Miami, you need to have an offense, and that's something that Brock Glenn and Florida State don't have. They're averaging 15 points per game. They're coming off their first loss in program history to the Duke Blue Devils, where they only put up 16 points in that matchup. What are you going to get out of a team that's 1-6 overall, hasn't shown heart throughout the regular season, has basically mailed it in from a defensive perspective? This is an opportunity for Miami. They've had 3 close games. I thought they would win last week. It was one of my best bets. They dominated from an offensive perspective. This is a game, guys, where the defense needs to take the next level. Close it out. You have the better quarterback. Now the rushing attack with Damian Martinez coming through. Pound them to oblivion. Win it by 24 or more.
Sounds like you might be in on this Miami team.
I should be talking in the locker room for this one. I just, what bothers me about Florida State, it's one thing to lose. It's another thing, at least compete. And I understand they were in it in the fourth quarter, but you come out flat each and every week. That's on Norvell. That's on the staff. What are they doing?
Florida State, just by the way, to show how bad the offense has been, whether with DJU or now Brock Glenn, they are the only FBS program out of 134 playing at this level in 2024 to have failed to score more than 21 points in any game this season. They have been under in 6 of 7. FSU is the second worst power conference scoring offense in the country, the worst total offense among the Power 4. Kevin Walsh, take it away.
My breakdowns of this game are the ramblings of an absolute madman. A person who has no idea what to do. When Florida State lost the second game this year, the Boston College one, I said, all right, Season's done. They've got 3 Super Bowl-style matchups between Clemson, Notre Dame, and then this matchup here with Miami. They have to win one of those games to salvage this season. There is no salvaging this season, obviously, but I still bet them against Clemson, and that was awesome. The fact that I did not cover because I bet it too early, that's not how we drew it up. And then we get to this game, and it's all right, stick to the Super Bowl style, except I can't stick to the Super Bowl style because I actually think Miami is in a good spot. The offense has been crisp and clean. My offer to you people is one of my most absurd, but it is an inverted parlay of Cam Ward over his passing and Xavier Restrepo under his receiving. It's happened a few times this season. No wideout has gone for 90-plus this year against this team.
Right.
Only one has gone for over 70 yards against the Florida State defense. But the pass defense is still not amazing. They allowed Mendoza to throw for 300 against them. 270-plus we saw Memphis's Hennigan get to. So I think Cam Ward could still throw for 300 while maybe everybody eats and it's not this monster Restrepo game.
And you see the numbers on Cam Ward, who enters this final Saturday in October as your solo Heisman Trophy favorite at plus 180. 319 yards last week, 4 touchdowns against Louisville. He has thrown for at least 304 yards in all 7 games for the Hurricanes this year. He is leading the nation, of course, with 2,538 passing yards and 24 touchdowns. Both of those top college football. He is averaging 363 yards per game. You compare him to the 3 last Heisman Trophy winners, all, of course, playing quarterback, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Bryce Young. Ward has more passing yards through their first 7 games of the year and as many touchdown passes as Bryce Young, 24, more than both Daniels and Williams. Florida State is better defending the pass, 3rd in the ACC, allowing less than 200 yards per game. Worst rushing defense, giving up $162. Both Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher Jr. have a rushing yards prop of 54.5. The Paul Bunyan Trophy on the line tonight in Ann Arbor. And we got the news late last night that we go back to where it started. Davis Warren, the starting quarterback once again for the Maize and Blue, has not played since the final non-conference game for Michigan against Arkansas State, or at least that was his final start. The 117th all-time matchup. And Kev, the look-ahead line to this game in the summer, first-year head coach Jonathan Smith for MSU, win total for the Spartans 4.5. Reigning national champs despite all the turnover for the Maize and Blue. This number was 24.5. for this final weekend in October. Now it's just 4 and a hook. But that's not the only spread math we're doing today.
Yeah, it annoys me that I have to bet this game.
Yeah.
I mean, if Alex Orgy was in here,
Yeah.
whoa. The danger man. Not Dr. Danger, but I like where you're going.
Yeah.
This is the biggest spread math spot I think my eyes have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do spread math with games that happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Literally what these teams did last week, I have to lay the 4 with Michigan. Because Michigan last week laid more at Illinois, who is certainly power rated higher than Michigan State, who caught more points last week at home against Iowa, who Iowa, I think, is now power rated above Michigan, but I think a week ago probably was not power rated above Michigan. Again, I think the spread math suggests that if these teams played last week, before those 2 results, this line might be 14. I have to buy low here on this Michigan Wolverines team. I do think Warren is better than Tuttle, which means they're playing their second best option at quarterback, so it is an upgrade. It's still not Alex Orgy.
Yeah, I like Michigan as well. They've won 2 straight in the series, won this game 49-0 last year. That was with a different coaching staff. I get that, but when you look at Jonathan Smith there, you are playing more consistent. I'll just say this, the quarterback change, you're playing at home, you haven't played well, you got torched on the ground by Illinois, giving up $187 to that offense. This is a statement game for the defense. They need to step up and put the game on Childs. If they could do that, I think they win it convincingly.
I know you see me flipping out. You know who leads the Michigan Wolverines in passing touchdowns?
Alex Orgy.
Like, what are we doing, man? Like, I know everybody thinks it's a bit. You have 3 quarterbacks that can't pass, but one of them's a supreme athlete. Mm-hmm. Why are we rotating in the kids that can't pass and aren't that athletic? This is crazy
I don't
from
know.
Sharon Moore.
I don't
This
know.
is nuts.
And you would expect then the maize and blue to focus on the ground. Michigan State's allowing 131 yards this year, but under first-year defensive coordinator Joe Rossi, it's not actually as bad as it appears. They've faced more than 240 attempts on the ground, just 3.7 yards per pop. I think Michigan State pulls off the upset tonight in Ann Arbor. The last time that Michigan lost 4 games in a full year was 2008 in a regular season, and that year MSU won the Paul Bunyan Trophy. Sunflower Showdown tonight in the Little Apple. Kansas State near a double-digit favorite, Lacey Guy, against Kansas. KU, one of the more compelling teams this country, but not in a good way. 2-5, their first cover of the year last week in a rout of Houston. How close is tonight in Manhattan?
I think it's very close, and the reason why I say that, from the spread perspective and series perspective, they've lost 15 straight. Last year they lost 31-27. Jalen Daniels playing more consistent over the last couple of weeks. The passing attack is coming on. Give me KU to potentially strike the upset.
In K-State, this thing's now trickling down under the double-digit marker here. I think the Wildcats getting back home for the first time in a bit could look to flex muscle.
The Cats have won 15 straight in this series, the 122nd all-time meeting today. More on college football today, next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like this that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, but the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to college football today, live right here on SportsGrid. Our quarterback head-to-head comparison for some of the biggest games on this final Saturday in October. The best game, our CFT game of the week, is in College Station tonight. It's just a 1.5 spread in favor of Texas A&M at home. Connor Wigman back as the starting quarterback for the Aggies, with mixed results this year. 3 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. In the 2 starts he has made, Against FBS opponents, he has thrown multiple INTs. Garrett Nussmeier on the other side for LSU. A little bit inconsistent as of late. Last week, less than 240 through the air. First time this year he has had less than 285 passing yards. Lisa, as you break down this matchup, what can we expect to see from the quarterbacks tonight at Kyle Field?
Well, I think if you're LSU and Garrett Nussmeier, you want to get through that 275.5 because you have multiple weapons, and that's how your offense is built, averaging around 337 passing yards per game. We've seen inconsistency over the past couple of weeks from Connor Wigman. 2 interceptions last week. They get the 10-point win over Miss State, no cover. You want to put the pressure, even though you're on the road, on Connor Wigman to match your offense score for score. If this game resembles that game against Notre Dame, then Texas A&M, in my opinion, is going to be live because they have the better rushing attack, averaging 214 heading into this matchup. So I want to push tempo if I'm LSU, just the way I did against Arkansas, Kev. So the more important quarterback for me is, in fact, Garrett Nussmeier to dictate the tempo in this game.
Yeah, they win with Nussmeier, right? Where maybe A&M winning in spite of Wegman, or at least he's not the primary part of this team. I'm looking at Nussmeier over 1.5 passing touchdowns at -146. It's expensive, but with this being the best game on the board, we have seen some boosts out there. Maybe get a little bit of better juice on it. He had 2+ in the first 6 games, 0 last week. That's a clear and obvious bounce-back spot. A&M this season's allowed a lot more touchdowns through the air than on the ground, so that is something I'm interested in. I also do think it's worth mentioning Nussmeier's Heisman candidacy. A win today on the road at A&M. This team will then all of a sudden be in the driver's seat to make the SEC championship, and statistically, he is at the level. He's not Cam Ward, but he is at the level necessary where, again, I shouldn't be surprised, but team success is a lot of the Heisman race right now, Ben. And LSU all of a sudden would be able to say, hey, we've got it as much as anybody else.
LSU has the minus money price to reach the college football playoff. The Bayou Bengals have the shorter number of these two programs to win the SEC crown at this moment. Plus 460 for LSU, a 7-1 number on A&M. Georgia and Texas, still the two shortest prices. Not only 233 last week for Nussmeier, his first with less than 285. The only game this year he has not thrown for multiple touchdown passes. By the way, Connor Wigman, multiple touchdown passes just once this year against McNeese State in the 3 starts he has made against FBS foes. He has 1 touchdown pass, and he has multiple interceptions in 2 of those 3 games. Caden Durham got going last week for the Bayou Bengals on the ground. 3 rushing scores, first LSU running back this year to have more than 100 yards against power conference competition. Intriguing quarterback matchup out in Autzen Stadium. It is Dylan Gabriel, who leads number 1 Oregon, who is tied for the second best price to win the Heisman Trophy at plus 320. His stats, Kev, obviously more impressive this year than Luke Altmaier, but Altmaier has not turned over the football very often. Only 1 INT thrown this year. A passing yards prop, though, less than 200. We see this game, Oregon's laying 3 touchdowns. You don't expect a ton of points, though. What can we see out of Gabriel?
Yeah, I think for Gabriel, while I'm not expecting a ton, I do think at some point, in order for him to really secure this Heisman Trophy, he is going to need, Joe, a marquee performance statistically. Of course, the game against Oregon was monster. He threw in that football game for 341, which was the most he's thrown against an FBS opponent. I want to see, though, is there a game in him where he throws for 400 yards? I mean, it's college football, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How about 4 passing touchdowns? Once this season, he's thrown more than 2. When do we see Dylan Gabriel have a Heisman statistical performance? I don't know if we've seen that yet. Maybe Ohio State, but 1 is not really enough.
Yeah, think about Cam Ward, right? We've seen multiple 400-yard performances, multiple 4-touchdown type of games, and Gabriel's got a 77% completion percentage, but a lot of the throws up until this point outside the Ohio State game were short to intermediate throws. So this is an opportunity. I think when you look at this game, which quarterback has to get over the total? I think it is Dylan Gabriel, because if he doesn't, then we're looking lower scoring.
Yeah.
We're looking ugly. And this is a game where, Altmaier could throw, 112 yards in this game, run it, and let's try to make it a 17-13 game. They did it against Penn State. Yeah. They did it against in Michigan. So if that game plays out in Eugene, Altmaier doesn't have to do all that much.
When you look at Dylan Gabriel, in all 7 games this year for the Ducks, he has thrown for multiple touchdown passes, 83% completion percentage or better in 4 of 7. But when he's been less than 75%, and it's come 3 times in 4 Oregon Big Ten games. Luke Altmaier, in 4 Big Ten games, has carried the football at least 10 times, sacked 14 times in the first 3 for the Illini, so he's been scrambling a ton. Only 1 sack last week against Michigan. Ran in a touchdown, plus 410. He's got multiple touchdowns utilizing his legs on the ground in Big Ten play. They won a game last week in those, why am I blanking on his name? Red Grange? That's his name, right? Red Grange throwbacks. Playing throwback football, 80 passing yards for Altmaier, and they still pull the upset over Michigan. How many passing yards are we going to see at MetLife? It's Riley Leonard for Notre Dame. It's Blake Horvath, the quarterback for Navy. Kev, we look at this game. 161 passing yards is what the Naval Academy is averaging this year. The last time they threw for 125-plus over the span of a season on average nearly a decade ago in 2016. Might we see more air yards out of Horvath than Leonard today?
So annoying. It's so annoying. We can't bet this. And even worse, if you go to New York to put some bets down, you can't get the college player props.
Crazy.
It's annoying, Joe. I know I'm being a pest, but I'm annoyed.
Leonard has to get over that total for Notre Dame to cover. Hartman, 42-3 because of the 4 touchdowns in the passing attack. Get them out of the game plan. We'll see if he can do it.
Leonard under in the first 5, over with at least 200 passing yards in each of the last 2. We'll talk more about that game in just a little bit. The rest of the ranked teams in action next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on College Football Today, we get you set for this final Saturday in October. The rest of the ranked teams in action on this Week 9 Saturday slate. Another change once again at the quarterback spot for Oklahoma. Michael Hawkins Jr., who replaced Jackson Arnold, is now back riding the pine. Jackson Arnold set to get the start today against Ole Miss. The Runnin' Rebs, of course, the last time we saw them 2 Saturdays ago in Baton Rouge, suffering their second loss of the season. But nearly a 3-touchdown spread, Kev, in favor of the Rebs today back in Oxford. Is that too many points in favor of Ole Miss?
So I think the number is all right. I don't think it's like, oh, what are they doing here type of number. I could only look Oklahoma because I don't trust Ole Miss laying this type of points. You and I are on opposite sides of this game.
Correct.
I'm taking a chance on a buy low over here. I think at 48.5, if I remember correctly, or over flat 49 for me. I view this as, so look, Ole Miss has not been great off of the bye in terms of scoring the football. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of spitting in the face of that trend where Ole Miss, though, is in a unique spot because usually they leave bye weeks to play Bama. They're playing a bad football team in Oklahoma. I know the defense has been solid, but Ole Miss's offense still is led by Jackson Dart, who's been one of the most efficient quarterbacks in college football. It is also an opportunity, if there ever was one, to buy low on Oklahoma's offense. They've scored under 10 points in consecutive games, 12 total over their last 2 football games, Joe. This is a spot to me where I think there's multiple avenues to get home. I think Ole Miss could score 40. I think Oklahoma could score 21. If either of those happen, we're going to shoot through this number. If we can land in the middle, I still think we get home on this total.
I like Oklahoma, and this is a close your eyes and take Oklahoma because I do believe in the defense. They're only giving up 21 points per game. I know they've given up back-to-back performances over 30-plus, but a lot of that is due to the inconsistency of the offense, a lot of 3-and-outs. They're only converting 27% on third-down offense. They fire Seth Luttrell, their offensive coordinator. Right. Now it's back to Jackson Arnold, maybe a slight reset. And we saw Ole Miss again. This game played out in Kentucky, right? When they faced Kentucky, it was a similar number, and they struggled. It's the same type of team. So I buy into the Oklahoma defense. I don't love it, but I did play it. I think the Sooners could be live.
Ole Miss has been favored in all 7 games this year. They're both 5-2 straight up and against the spread. In all 5 victories, they have covered the number. They've also gone under in all 6 games against FBS competition with the second-best scoring defense in the country. Oklahoma's got to prove it to me for Jackson Arnold. Not sure they score more than 2 touchdowns in this game. We are on opposite sides. I am under 49.5. Total has worked its way down ever so slightly to 48 and a hook. This led to our first debate to start off our second hour for Ben's Top 10, more specifically the wait list in the non-inclusion of BYU. Listen, I believe in the Cougs. They're 7-0. They have covered in 6 of those 7 games. BYU has earned the right to be where they are. And yet, here's what stands out, Joe. They are catching points on the road against the Central Florida team that after a 3-0 start has now dropped 4 consecutive games. Is the right side favored tonight in Orlando?
I don't think they are, and I was on UCF in back-to-back games, Cincinnati and last week against Iowa State. Ja'Cory Brown stepped in for KJ Jefferson, and we saw this play out a couple weeks ago. Baylor was favored at home in Waco over BYU as a 3.5-point home favorite, and they lost the ball game outright. I believe in BYU. The Cardiac Kids, they pulled the game out on Friday night in 40 seconds. Retzlaff and that offense found a way. They're disciplined. I just can't. 62 yards for Ja'Cory Brown through the air. I can't do that at home. They're not running the football the way they were in the early part of the year. Give me BYU in the minor upset.
Well, UCF last week ran the rock.
They did, I know, but he was 8 of 20.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, look, I get you. Ja'Cory Brown, though, has been a little bit better for this team than KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, he's been more consistent than KJ was. I'll give him that.
I'm on Ja'Cory Brown over 122.5 passing yards. So, yeah, Joe, 62 last week, 207 the week prior. All right, so let's land in the middle and get through this number here. The only starting quarterback at the FBS level that didn't get over this was from Oklahoma State. because that's a clown show football team right now. The team still got there. Again, somebody better put Gundy on the hot seat outside of me. That's a clown show. What's going on? I'm playing Ja'Cory Brown through a light number.
BYU as an underdog, both 3-0 straight up and ATS. They have won outright in all 3 games as a dog. If they do so again, I promise an inclusion on the wait list for Ben's top 10, maybe even inside the top 10 from next week when we start off November. We'll hit Duke and SMU, an intriguing ACC affair on the other side of the break. But notice the Stangs, an 11.5-point road favorite in Durham. And then the betting cards. It's all next on CFT.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you guys do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Our Week 9 betting cards on the horizon, but before we get there, an intriguing ACC matchup tonight in Durham. SMU enters as an 11.5-point favorite on the road to take on the Blue Devils, 2 teams that are both 6-1 this season, but the Stangs, Joe Lisi, unbeaten in ACC play. In fact, in the last 2 years, going back to their time in the American, they have not dropped a conference contest since the start of 2023. Reflected in the number, double digits on the road. Is SMU going to cover?
I think they will. Now, it's going to be a difficult matchup. Duke coming off the emotional win over Florida State. Maybe there's a little bit of a hangover, but you have to play football. I was very impressed with the road win over Stanford, 40-10. They cover on the road on the West Coast. Defensively, only giving up 88 rushing yards per game, 30% third down defense, and I'm still not sold on Duke's passing attack to go toe-to-toe with Kevin Jennings in this matchup. Give me SMU. It might be a 4-quarter game. They pull away and cover this number.
I'm really struggling with this game here, and I don't know if it's – I don't know which 6-1 team has me more confused. Duke is 6-1. Nobody thinks they're good, like at all, which I get. Yeah. SMU's 6-1. They're ranked. We also don't think they're any good here. So you typically then say, all right, I'm at home. I'm catching double digits. Let me just take that here. But the thing is I don't even know which areas are fraudulent. I truly, again, I know that is not super helpful to people looking to get down on this game, but I wonder if this is a game where maybe we can feel a little more concrete. Because the SMU offense is telling us they're good.
For sure.
All right, let's do it one more time. Manny Diaz and Duke, typically you can trust the defense. But Duke is saying they're scrappy, and they should be getting a little more respect. All right, let's see it. Let's win a football game here. If I had to play it, though, I would be taking double digits at home with the 6-1 team.
Duke, both 2-1 straight up and against the number as an underdog so far this year. Duke is the best scoring defense in ACC play, allowing just a tick above 17 points per game, under in all three. Did you just see something? Did I say something
no,
to
you didn't say it.
Damn.
I tell you this right now. I'm not going to lie. I keep losing head-to-heads to BSS. All right, last week, Tennessee team total. We get shut out in the first half, nearly come through. Ole Miss wide receiver Trey Harris is out today against Oklahoma per a source, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. Mid-season, best receiver in football, Biletnikoff winner, if you had to. That's a huge loss for Ole Miss. And it's super super concerning.
Yeah, it is. And they're going to have to run the football with Bentley in that rushing attack. Can they do it? That goes into the strength of Oklahoma. I have them booked already at plus 19.5. I'm sure it might be going down now. Right now, 18.5, so even maybe a flat 18.
And just one final point on the game in Durham. If the Mustangs offense that on this 4-game win streak is as good as we have seen, averaging better than 45 points per game, Kevin Jennings has been a revelation as of late. I like the over tonight against this Duke team. SMU is favored by 11.5. All right, it is time for the Week 9 betting cards. We'll give you all of the big game best bets for this ranked versus ranked top 25 Saturday. 5 of those games in just a moment. But we start with the mastermind. We just talked about that game. It's Ole Miss, Oklahoma. There's some varying reports about availability. Joey, you're still backing the Sooners to start it off.
I am. It's more about a bounce-back spot for Oklahoma offensively, right? Firing Seth Luttrell and Jackson Arnold being reinstilled in that offense. You got to give it your best effort. They've played well and gutty from a defensive perspective. Haven't played all that bad on the road. I understand the last 2 games they didn't show up. But let's see what you get on the road against the top 25 opponent. I'm willing to take the 19.5. Again, you don't have to win, but you want to spot me 3 scores to start. I'll take Oklahoma plus the points. We talked about Nebraska, right? Listen, you get blown out 56-7. That was the poorest showing. Matt Rule looked like a deer in the headlights in the press conference. You commit 5 turnovers. Your offense couldn't run it. Front 7 gave up 200-plus yards to Indiana. You got another opportunity to erase last week. It's back-to-back road games. This team has beaten you 7 straight. You got to make this a 4-quarter game. You somehow, some way, try and push it to the 4th quarter and see if you could strike the upset. I'm taking the Cornhuskers with the points, and then I'll go with Texas Tech, guys. Texas Tech plus the 6.5. They match up very well, in my opinion, against TCU. I think the Red Raiders are still alive for a Big 12 title. Taj Brooks, I think, can run it on that front 7. TCU giving up a ton of yards, a ton of points to opposing offenses. Texas Tech on the road. I'm taking the 6.5, but I don't even want them. I think the plus 185 is live. They win it outright.
All right.
You want to go?
Yeah, we'll get right into it then. Again, this bats lead off here with an over in the Ole Miss-Oklahoma game at 49. Up to 49.5, 50, so it's a nice job getting the best of the number. But look, I'm not saying I wouldn't. The Trey Harris thing kills, man. He has been so good here, and I was hoping that Ole Miss would look kind of for a breakout game. I wonder if this team now is in like, look, man, a lot of chaos around us. Win, move on, hang with Georgia, pray that that's enough. I don't know if it will be, but I'm still on that over. I'm on the under in Wisconsin, Penn State. Been hot in Penn State games here. It's a good spot to look for Penn State in the look-ahead spot where probably don't want to show too much in front of Ohio State against the Wisconsin defense that's rounding into form. And I think we're getting to sell high a little bit on a Wisconsin offense that's been weirdly good with Locke for a little bit now, but not against a caliber like they're going to see today in the Penn State defense. Ja'Cory Brown, over 122.5 passing yards. Way too low of a number. Only one starting FBS quarterback didn't get through this year. Ja'Cory Brown threw for 207 before last week. I understand he only threw for 60, but still, if we meet in the middle, he's getting over this number. And then I'm on Michigan -4. Again, this is just, basically this number moved about 10 points because of 2 results last week. The way I bet spreads, I had to bet Michigan -4. I wish Orji was playing. I truly do believe Davis Warren is better than Jack Tuttle based on every single bit of evidence that suggests Davis Warren is better than Jack Tuttle. Sharon Moore, nothing has dropped more than my opinion of Sharon Moore throughout this college football season, yet I still lay the 4 with him here.
Listen, we're on the opposite side for a couple of games on this Saturday slate, so I'll go right to that one, the battle for the Paul Bunyan Trophy tonight in Ann Arbor. This Michigan State team, in its first year with Jonathan Smith, has been wildly impressive. Win total was 4.5. They have the opportunity to go over that number by tonight. They are 4-3 straight up. They are 3-1-1 against the number as an underdog. Their inability to convert in the red zone has plagued them, but Jonathan Kim, as their field goal kicker, has been able to convert. Aiden Childs, 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in the first 4 games for the Spartans this year. Just 2 TDs, but only 2 interceptions the last 2 games. That will be crucial tonight against still a poised Michigan defense, but not nearly as good through the air as we have seen. And I have a lot of questions about this Michigan offense against what I think is an improving Michigan State defense week over week with new DC Joe Rossi. Michigan State covering is a 4.5-point underdog and maybe winning outright. Again, the last time that Michigan lost 4 regular season games in a full season was 2017. What happened that year? The Spartans went into the Big House and won outright. Wisconsin catching points at home. Huge spot in Camp Randall. They have been now an underdog. This will be their 3rd time this season. They were an underdog 3 times in the previous 3 years. It is an opportunity for Luke Fickell to make the immediate impact they have been craving in Madison. Penn State can still win this game, but Wisconsin's turnaround in the last 3 will be justified tonight if they keep this game in the number. Outscoring opponents on this 3-game win streak, 117-16. Auburn's been a compelling team. On Wednesday, I tweeted about 7 teams in the country that are good on both sides of the football, averaging better than 6.5 yards per play, limiting opposing offenses to less than 5 yards per play. Auburn is one of them. They're 2-5. The other 6 teams are a combined 36-4. The reason Auburn is 2-5, they turn the football over. -10 turnover margin, tied for the worst among the power conference programs this season. Figure that out today when outright in Kentucky against the worst scoring offense in the SEC. We talked Oklahoma, Ole Miss. I'm on the other side, under 49.5. And speaking of a compelling rivalry, Sunflower Showdown tonight. Kansas State, Kansas, over 55.5. I think K-State can put up their points. Kansas is the compelling team. One of 5 FBS programs that is perfect in the red zone this year. 24 attempts, 24 scores, 19 total touchdowns. And they are one of 10 teams converting 50% of 3rd downs or more. I think we see some points tonight in Manhattan. Our big game best bets. That's next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
On this final Saturday in October, there are 5 ranked versus ranked top 25 tilts. It's the most we have seen in a single Saturday the entirety of this 2024 college football campaign. And so, as we round out college football today over these next 15 minutes until kick in that noon Eastern time window to start off this Week 9 Saturday slate, we break down each and every ranked versus ranked game with our big game best bets here on college football today. We start with the earliest of the 5. It's noon Eastern time. It's in New Jersey. Sadly for our bets, it's a top 25 tilt between number 12 Notre Dame and 24th ranked Navy. Navy ranked for a second consecutive week. They are 6-0 for the first time since 1979. As we look at the numbers, the Irish laying 13.5 inside MetLife Stadium, total 50 and a hook. Navy is the only team in the country to go over in every single game this year. All 6 for the midshipmen. They have been over the number by an average margin of 16 points per game. So, Joe, if Navy continues to light it up offensively, can they keep this to within 2 touchdowns?
I think they can. I think they're going to be in the game from start to finish. We talked about Notre Dame dominating the series, won last 6 straight, the last 4 by an average margin of 25-plus per game. But I still believe in Navy's offense, averaging 274 yards on the ground. The inconsistency of Riley Leonard. This wasn't Sam Hartman that lit them up last year. To me, that's the difference. I'm not suggesting they potentially win, but they'll make it a game into the fourth quarter. Give me the points with Navy, Kev.
I'm not going to spend the whole segment complaining about the Jersey stuff. I cannot bet this, so I did not bet this, but I would look under in this game. Mm-hmm. I will say with our ranked action today, of the 5, only 1 is within 2 touchdowns. But what that means is if any of these dogs win outright, they are huge, changing things to the market. Sure. Within this game here, it's not just that Notre Dame's chances to make the playoff would likely be done. But who is to say Navy then does not jump in front of Boise as the favorite to become the G5 outright or the G5 group, performer with inside the college football playoff there? This is a massive game for both sides of the field.
Brian Newberry and Navy, their best path, of course, to the college football playoff is by winning the American. This is not a conference game. But Kevin is right. It's not automatic. It's going to be 4 power conference champs in a 1 group of 5. It's not how the logistics of it works, but more than likely, we understand the reality. So you have to be the highest ranked group of 5 conference champ to earn that 5th and final automatic bid. This would be huge for the midshipmen. Normally, if you're playing a service academy, it's a multiple touchdown spread. You want to keep this game nasty, 17-10. I actually think for Navy to cover, they got to put up points. The 4th best scoring offense in the country against the top 10 defense in Notre Dame. Again, what's infuriating for me, a guy that lives in New York, I can't even bet this number across the Hudson because they don't have player props. Make it make sense. Pretty much, though, when you look at Blake Horvath, who has had 10 rushing touchdowns in 4 of the 5 FBS games for Navy this year. He has scored multiple touchdowns in 3 of the 4. You're betting on the idea, are the mids going to score? Yes, minus 105 for their quarterback to do so. That game at noon Eastern, if you are not in New Jersey, get those bets in right now. Let's get to our next top 25 tilt. We head to Tuscaloosa. Of course, some changing news on who that starting quarterback could potentially be for Missouri. Brady Cook, doubtful for most of the week, now listed as a game-time decision. If it's not Cook, it's Drew Pine, who used to play for Notre Dame, played in 11 games in 2022, 22 touchdowns to only 6 INTs that year for the Irish, but not overly productive. 15.5-point spread in favor of the Crimson Tide, Kev. Total at 51.5. Alabama's supposed to avoid its 3rd loss of the season today, but can they cover more than this 2-touchdown number?
Laid more than this against both South Carolina as well as when they went out and lost to Vanderbilt, so no guarantees here for the Crimson Tide. I think that this game will be close enough to get Marcus Carroll through a really low 60-plus rushing yard number on the season in games that Carroll and Nate Noel play. The lead back who's out for this game, they average per game 122 yards. That's double this number. We saw Carroll get 12 of 15 first-half running back carries for Missouri in the game that they played where Nate Noel, because this is not the first time Noel's missed a game. This will be his backfield. He gets through 60-plus rush yards against Alabama.
I like to look because Alabama allowed 5 yards per carry and 214 rushing yards to Tennessee last week. They're playing at home. You want to test that front seven to see if they're legit in this matchup. For me, I think Missouri's playing with house money. I understand nobody's expecting them to win, but to Kevin's point, if they're going to run the football, get it into the fourth quarter, again, take some shots. And we saw Alabama, I keep saying it, struggle against South Carolina, struggle at home in the second half against Georgia. They struggle for 3 quarters against USF. This is a 6-1 football team. If they strike the upset, Alabama's dead and buried. Give me the points with Missouri somehow, some way.
Alabama has not lost 3 SEC games in the regular season since 2010. Kalen DeBoer, you want to get the guys back on track. Do so for where you are best. That is offensively. Jalen Milroe in the 3 games that Alabama has been an SEC favorite, 3 touchdowns but to 5 interceptions. Needs to change today. Missouri is a top 10 scoring defense in the country. It's because of what they have done against non-power conference competition. Only 3 points in total in those 3 games allowed. Alabama needs to go over this team total today of 34.5. Stay in college football playoff consideration. The team that upset Alabama, that's Vanderbilt. They did so in Nashville. They get a top 5 team once again today in Texas. 18.5-point spread in favor of the Longhorns. Joe looking to bounce back from their only defeat of this year to Georgia last week at home. Will Texas do so comfortably?
I think they will. We're seeing 17.5s in the market, some money coming in on Vanderbilt. But the biggest thing for me is that I believe Texas has the speed advantage, offense and defensive lines as well. Secondary only giving up 133 passing yards per game. If they could force Vanderbilt into long third downs, I think they have a significant advantage. I think they roll by, I said 30 or more. I think they paced Vandy tonight.
This is kind of a brothers in arms special. This is a connector. I know that you like Texas to score 35. You probably do if you like the over, folks. This Texas team total, probably my favorite bet on the board. Sark following a game where his team scored less than 20 has been dynamite. Truly, Joe, 50-plus could be in range.
Yeah, and I hope they get it.
And I'm cool with that. I think Diego Pavia and Vandy will also add into that as well. Pavia at least 2 passing touchdowns in all 4 games for the Doors against Power Conference competition. They have covered in all 4 of those games as the dog. Our biggest games on this Saturday. Next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Our final Saturday in October of this college football season in 2024 is about to begin, and there's a new number 1 team in the country entering this final weekend of the month. It is Oregon. In a top 20 tilt, the Ducks play host to number 20 Illinois. But it's a 3-touchdown spread in favor of those Ducks inside Autzen Stadium on this Saturday afternoon. 21.5 points, as you can see here, in favor of number 1. Joe, will this game look more competitive, like a true top 20 test?
I think it will, and I keep throwing out a score, 24-14, an ugly type of game on the road. Illinois has shown a propensity to cover these lines. They did it against Nebraska. They covered against Penn State and forced a lower-scoring game against the Nittany Lions. That's what they have to do up against Dylan Gabriel, Kev. They rushed for 187 yards last week. I think that'll travel well. They don't win, but they cover the 21.5.
So I'm on under 54.5 in this game. I feel that Illinois in a step-up spot. We've not seen enough from their offense. The Oregon defense has been so far this season in their games going up against Ohio State and Boise State. Illinois is not of that level. There were 2 props, though, that I would have preferred to play in this game. One was Terrence Ferguson, though with health, we didn't have his number.
Yeah.
The other was the bet that you placed in Jordan James. I didn't place the bet, Ben. He didn't play in the second half against Purdue. They were up by plenty, but Gabriel still played 2 drives. Only because I couldn't find any explanation, I backed off. I considered Noah Whittington to score, and then I saw he was minus money, and that just scared me off anything. So I was wondering within your breakdown if that stood out.
I saw him last week on the sideline in Ross-Ade, just kind of standing there, minding his own business. 10 carries, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns in that opening half. I think they wanted Dylan Gabriel to spin. I think they want him to stack up the yards to stay in Heisman Trophy consideration, give their bell cow in the Big Ten a couple of extra bits of rest, if you will, against Purdue. Because Jordan James in the first 3 Big Ten games for Oregon, even against an elite Ohio State rushing defense, 103 yards on the ground and a touchdown in all 3. Illinois' rushing defense, not elite this year. 3rd worst in the Big Ten, giving up $145 per game on the ground. If it is ugly, if it stays under, even if Oregon puts up some points, I think Jordan James over 100.5 rushing yards is the way to attack this game. Number on the rise, now 103.5. We know how good the Illini under Brett Bielema have been as an underdog. 16-8 against the spread, 10 outright victories since Burt took the reins in Champaign in 2021. Should be an interesting game for Oregon, ranked first in the AP poll for the first time since 2012. Now let's get to our CFT game of the week tonight under the lights in prime time in College Station. Kyle Field is the setting for a top 15 matchup in the SEC between LSU, ranked 8th in the country, on the road against number 14 Texas A&M. Kev, these 2 teams both lost their season opener on Sunday in Sin City against USC. A&M at home as a slight favorite against Notre Dame. From that point, each have won 6 consecutive games to get back in to the SEC, college football playoff, and national championship conversation. This is the one of our 5 ranked versus ranked games that is supposed to live up to the hype. What do you expect tonight at Kyle Field?
I expect Texas A&M to win with their defense and home field advantage, and that really is how I get to this number here. LSU is a team that I like preseason. I've enjoyed what I've seen from them so far. In a way, I kind of hope I'm wrong. I'm not telling you that this is a hedge. That's bizarre to do that right now. It's just I look at this spot, and I think these are mostly even teams. I'm getting Pick'em at home then in college football, biggest game in College Station in a little bit. I got to look A&M, Joe.
Oh, we were so close. For many weeks, we were so close. And now I can't talk to you for about 4 hours from 7:30 to 11:30 tonight. We know why Texas A&M is favored here. They're obviously undefeated in the SEC, but they've won 3 straight in the series at home by an average margin of 10 points per game. But I keep going back to the quarterback. I give the edge to Nussmeier, and I like the fact that those weapons are there. Mason Taylor, Caden Durham. We see Daniels strike. Anderson with big plays. I'll take that on the road. Plus Brian Kelly, not to take away from Elko, but I'll give the coaching advantage to Brian Kelly. Back-to-back road games scares me, but I'm rolling with the Tigers.
As a dog, as they were at home against Ole Miss with BK since the start of 2022, 4-3 straight up and against the number. Kev, to your point, home field atmosphere, one of the best environments in college football at Kyle Field, is why A&M is favored. I actually give the edge to LSU as the better team. And why? Because of the improvement defensively for Blake Baker and these Bayou Bengals. Under in 4 straight. We stay under tonight in a great game. 54.5 is that total. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. That does it for college football today. Week number 9 starts right now.